Double Dragon is the best game-to-film adaptation ever made. That's a bold statement, I know, but let me explain. Good films, to me, are like a reverse bell curve. If a film is fantastic, then that's great, I love it, good job, well done to everyone involved. But as a film moves towards that central curve of mediocrity, my eyes glaze over. When it comes to films based on games, a good 90% of them slot right into this yawning chasm of boredom. Double Dragon is not a good film. It isn't anywhere close to being a good film. It isn't even a good adaptation of the game it's based on. And that's perfect, because that absolutely makes it a film that is 10 times more entertaining to watch than something like Tomb Raider, where I'm effectively watching Angelina Jolie cosplaying as a fake British gender-swapped Indiana Jones. Yawn. Released in 1994, the film was directed by James Yukich, whose movie career seems to have started and ended with Double Dragon, because everything before and after this devolves into documentaries, video shorts, and music videos. But that's good. When you reach peak perfection, there's no point in continuing. Just bow out while you can. Now, Double Dragon the game was originally planted into arcades in 1987, and as with most arcade games, it didn't really have that much of a story attached to it. You played as Billy or Jimmy Lee, you fought rival gangs, you had a romantic love triangle fight with your brother in order to impress your sexy girlfriend, and that was it. It also involved bad guys that wanted to steal the Lee brothers' martial arts techniques, but let's be honest, it was basically a game about punching and kicking people until they fell over and died. Taking that premise and turning it into a film with a plot, well-rounded characters, and the usual things that cinema experiences entail, well, they had to put a little flesh on those bones, and if you look really closely at the game and the film side by side, I think you may notice some major differences.
2007. Los Angeles. The city has changed. Cops rule the day. Punks rule the night.
Basically, in the distant future of 2007, in a post-earthquake California, whatever that means, where San Diego and Los Angeles have been merged into one city for some reason, Billy and Jimmy Lee get their hands on an ancient Chinese talisman, completely by chance, that can bestow incredible powers. Some rich guy has the other half, and he wants to get their half because he can't just make do with what he's got, rich guy problems. While the plot might sound thin on the ground, and it is, it opens the film up to an absolute playground of stupid dialogue.
Oh, great. The power core.
Team Lee. Need any help?
We don't need your help, Marion.
Yeah, Marion.
Is that so?
Yeah.
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 Bad acting.
Hey. Chick with a 2 o'clock and she is my type. Pull over. Pull over.
I really don't think it's a good idea.
You're right. She is your type.
And Robert Patrick with blonde hair.
Afraid of a little aftershock.
Yes, Robert Patrick.
7 years ago, the quake was a trumpet's blow heralding my arrival.
Terminator Robert Patrick.
Many lives have been spent searching for the legendary Double Dragon.
Robert Patrick. Along the way, there's crude 90s CGI, there's a big guy that gets turned into an even bigger guy who's then force-fed spinach, there's a fight scene which involves rival gangs that makes absolutely no sense, and there's a speedboat chase. What more could you want? Be wary of spoilers here, folks, because it's time to get straight into the main.
I think it's a good bang for your buck. There's no brutal violence, no profanity. Sort of a classic fairy tale kind of bad against good kind of a story.
It's a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's not just a movie for kids. It's a really creative and interesting look at what the future could look like.
If we've done our job right, it should be very entertaining.
Like all the best films, Robert Patrick gives us a voiceover explaining that there's a mysterious medallion. One half contains the power of the body and the other half the power of soul. That's the legend of the Double Dragon. Get it? Because that's what the game is called. Anyway, every film should start with the headline, "Somewhere in China." I'm just saying it really sets the tone. It's nice and non-specific. And at this non-specific location, ninjas attack some monks because they're looking for the medallion. Yoink. Plot twist though, the main ninja turns out to be a sexy lady. We're introduced to the Terminator, who's pissed off because only half the medallion could be found, although it still gives him the power to turn into a 2D animation, so I don't know why he's getting his knickers in a twist about it. The other half of the medallion sits with this lass. She's Chinese, and that's basically all the backstory you need to give someone in the 90s if you want them to be the owners of an ancient talisman. She hangs out with the Lee brothers, although I've no idea why, because one of them is boring and the other one is an absolute dick.
Okay, hey, save some for me.
In a minute.
You're tagged, bro.
The Lee brothers are fighting in some tournament that I think is supposed to be a karate tournament, but it also involves tagging people in. I think it's basically just crap Fight Club. The Tom Cruise-shaped Lee brother consistently tries to cheat his way through the fight with such classic japes as this one.
3 points red! 3 points red! Go!
All right, 10 points for us. What?
Very honourable way to win a match, I'm sure you'll agree. Thankfully though, Tom Cruise Lee gets disqualified when he jumps on his opponent's back and gives him a noogie. However, as he has absolutely no control over his anger issues, all it takes is for his opponent to call him a loser before he jumps back in and starts fighting them again. This incites a riot. If you're wondering why these people are our protagonists, that's fine, keep wondering. We're treated to some exposition that explains the police are useless and that gangs roam the streets after a certain time. There's supposed to be a curfew, but it seems pretty much no one pays attention to this. The Lee brothers and their ancient Chinese exposition friend are driving along in their futuristic garbage-powered car, something that you'll just have to accept, when they get into a chase with one of the gangs, headed by none other than a Bobo, who you may not recognise from the game because he looks completely different. After a long chase and some pointless CGI, presumably to make it feel more video gamey, they all come to a stop in a dead-end alleyway. Things are initially looking bad.
Hey, Broomhead! We're gonna sweep the floor with your skull!
But they're rescued by a good gang who apparently were just stood with their backs to the wall, waiting for someone to come along so they could reveal themselves. Whatever passes the time, I suppose. The good gang are called the Power Corps, and for reasons unknown, they want the Lee brothers to help them do something. It's never really explained. They agree to do this because the leader of the Power Corps is a woman. We find out that she is, in fact, the daughter of the chief of police, and that dude hates gangs because he's the chief of police. But she's in a good gang, so it's fine. And this conflicted relationship is never actually explored within the film anyway, so it's pretty much a moot point. It does provide an effective insight into just how bad the police are, however, when you don't notice that your own daughter is constantly wearing a bad wig around the house. Chinese exposition woman explains to the Lee brothers about her talisman, and then, coincidentally, the Terminator turns up with the other half. A Bobo tipped him off, but because the Terminator is perpetually angry about everything, he sends a Bobo off for some experimental steroid treatment. Again, the less you ask, the more you'll enjoy things. A fight ensues.
Nice hair, dude.
Jimmy, Billy, run!
Stop them!
Steroid-fueled Bobo turns up. Robert Patrick uses his talisman to somehow turn himself into the Chinese woman.
Give it to me!
That's a toy. Don't let her have it!
It's never explained that he can do this, but apparently he can. He uses this ability to try and trick the Lee brothers into giving him the other half of the medallion, but it doesn't work and they lock him up. But then, it turns out he was actually just possessing her, so now they've accidentally locked her up. And then Patrick blows up the building, with her in it. So really, the Lee brothers just helped him commit murder. These are the perfect protagonists. This effectively closes Act 1 of the film, and if you thought things were wild and rambling already, things start to go off the deep end into Act 2. Robert Patrick uses his medallion to convince the gangs to make him their leader.
I am Kogashuko.
Abobo is captured by Power Core from the burning rubble of the Lee brothers' base and is consequently just made to eat spinach.
No more spinach!
Don't ask, I don't know either. The Lee brothers get into a fight with every single gang in the city who are now under the control of Robert Patrick, and these gangs involve punks, mailmen, schoolboys, mimes or clowns or something. Honestly, I have no idea what is going on, but it is absolutely the high point of nonsense in a film that rarely makes a lot of sense anyway, culminating in a scene where a mailman jumps off the top of a building for no reason. There's no time to breathe though, because we then jump straight into a speedboat chase.
Yes!
Wait a minute!
They're being chased by what is presumably a gang who were well prepared to chase them on the waterfront because they're dressed for the occasion and have jet skis that fire missiles. Of course they do. The Lee brothers are involved in a massive explosion, which they somehow survive and correctly announce,
Woohoo! What a ride! I bet those stooges think we're dead.
because yes, you would be. You've been involved in a massive explosion. Moving on, using the cover of presumed dead, they employ the help of that one woman who runs the Power Core gang to take the fight to Robert Patrick himself. No idea why they only take her and not the rest of the gang, but presumably it's so they can look at her ass again.
Our skater should have security occupied by now. Come on, let's go.
Yep, that'll be it. They attempt to get the other half of the medallion by using a badge on the end of a piece of string, which is the stupidest idea they could have thought of, because one, it's pretty easy for anyone with a pair of eyes to see this is happening, and two, even if they successfully picked it up, it wouldn't fit through the grating anyway. Within seconds they're spotted, and then their presumed dead status is completely revoked, rendering the last 15 minutes of the film a complete waste of time that amounted to nothing. All of this happened while, coincidentally, Girl Power's dad, the chief of police, was refusing a bribe, even though he didn't really need to be bribed because the police don't really seem to be doing that much policing anyway. He's surprised to see his daughter falling through a ceiling, who wouldn't be, and then he stops the sexy ninja woman from stabbing everyone. Robert Patrick tricks the Lee brothers into falling down a hole by
Billy, the medallion!
just stepping out of the way. This is Looney Tunes levels of stupid. Caught between saving her father from certain death or going after her two new boyfriends, the leader of the world's least useful gang decides her dad has probably lived long enough anyway and goes after the boys. Robert Patrick looks directly at the camera for some reason, and then the chief of police faces off against female ninja in what can only be described as a deleted scene from the original Star Trek series. Downstairs, the boys and their hanger-on come across a science lab in which Robert Patrick has been experimenting on random people, presumably to give them super strength or something. Again, never really explained, but all we end up with is this basketball player who looks like a zombie. He gets crushed, but then it turns out it was cartoon Robert Patrick again. And then they switch on the world's most powerful fan, and then they switch it off again. The film is the very definition of, and then what happened? And the answer is usually just whatever fell onto the page that day. And then another fight happens with another zombie, which results in the team getting split up because this particular zombie seems to really like being a surrogate father.
Isn't this fun, Jimmy?
Big reveal time, Robert Patrick announces that he killed Jimmy Lee's father because why not? It's just one of those films. Everyone has to have some connection to everyone else, that's just good writing. By this time, Billy and his new girlfriend have apparently just given up and gone back home, but they don't have too much time to rest because the base is invaded by a gang. Not sure how they knew they were there, but let's not overthink things. More fighting ensues. Green water is involved. More than once. We then cut to a scene where a Bobo looks like he's about to start having a wank, but catches a glimpse of himself in the mirror and begins to cry. These are the kind of tonal shifts I want in my cinema experiences. Jimmy returns, but you guessed it, it's not Jimmy, it's the Terminator, pretending to be Jimmy. There's a fight where a load of arcade machines get damaged, mostly so they can shoehorn in a Double Dragon reference, and then, for absolutely no reason, Billy throws the medallion away.
Piece of junk. I could do better without you.
This is lucky because, again, for some reason, this unlocks the power of the medallion and gives Billy the power of body, which basically means he can withstand being smashed through a wall, which then happens. Now, because our two heroes are absolute morons who have learned nothing over the past 90 minutes, Robert Patrick gets his hands on both medallion pieces and turns into a Buffy the Vampire Slayer reject. A fight, once again, ensues. The boys get the medallion back, but when they use it, instead of turning into a pair of evil demons, they turn into a couple of absolute pricks. Then their dead friend turns up in a sparkly cloud. Then they beat up Robert Patrick and possess him, so they can do this.
Ah! Hey! Why are you hitting yourself? Hey, don't hit yourself! Come on, quit it!
Bear in mind all the fun and frolics they're having here. This dude killed their friend. They are literally puppeteering a murderer and making him hit himself. The police turn up just after the nick of time and arrest the bad guy, and then a Bobo becomes everyone's best friend, even though he's probably an accessory to murder. The murder of their friend, who they just seem to have forgotten about at this point.
You think maybe I could drive?
Oh no, I've seen the way you drive.
And then the credits roll. Robert Patrick might be a surprising inclusion, especially as the main antagonist, but there are some more surprising faces in amongst the rest of the cast. It's actually pretty insane who turns up in this film unexpectedly. Alyssa Milano as the lead female role, I guess that's not exactly out of the park, but they could have done worse. She's been in quite a lot of things, like the American Film Institute presents TV or Not TV, and Poison Ivy 2. Anyway, Alyssa Milano. Then we've got Michael Goddamn Berryman playing the gang leader. He's only in the film for about 5 minutes before he's killed off, but it's still the best 5 minutes because Michael Goddamn Berryman is on screen. You may remember him from 1975's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1977's The Hills of Eyes, and then every film that has ever come out since then. Al Leong is here, but in a surprising twist. In this film, he plays a henchman, something he's definitely not done before in any film. Zorro himself turns up, George Hamilton playing a newscaster. He's unsurprisingly not credited in this film, presumably because he realised that a quick payday isn't worth tanking your career for. And we have, unfortunately, Andy Dick playing Andy Dick. Can't win them all. Outside of the casting, the film is caked in so many layers of cheese, from the set design, to the acting, to the storyline, to the fight scenes. There's also a running joke throughout the entire film that doesn't even land the first time, but they just keep going with it all the way up to the conclusion.
Homely. Ugly.
Once Act 2 comes into play, the amount of action sequences that occur back to back with barely any context is admirable. It at least shows that the director and screenwriters may have known very little about the game they were trying to emulate on the big screen, but they had a fair idea of the audience they were trying to cater to. The action isn't particularly well shot, but hiring Mark Dacascos as one of the Lee brothers, an actual martial artist who's gone on to work on multiple films where he plays a martial artist. Scott Wolf, on the other hand, well, he wasn't exactly helped by this script. Almost everything he does in the film is based on rash decisions or just outright dickishness. He is not, so far as I'm aware, a martial artist, but I'm sure he has seen at least one martial art. You'd think that based on the reception Super Mario Bros. Received, Hollywood would have learnt their lesson pretty quickly, but Double Dragon came out 1 year later, and in the same year as Street Fighter the movie, no less. In the span of 2 years, we got 3 of the best, read worst, video game to film adaptations, before they started to move away from the weird, conceptual pantomime wackiness and into more serious efforts which, while technically better, ended up being less entertaining as a result. The chances of us ever getting video game movies as poorly judged as the big 3 are dead and gone. There's too much money at stake. We're past the point where someone can buy the license to an arcade game with barely any story and try to wrestle those bare bones into a body that doesn't fit. And that's a shame, because Double Dragon is incredibly entertaining to watch, for 1,001 reasons, and none of them are good. That's just the way I like it.